light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. Today I just wanted to offer some reflections on dedication and integrity. It seems that these are becoming difficult, perhaps even rare qualities in our world. But I'm sure one could also mount an argument that they were not particularly present in other ages as well. So maybe they're as common as they've ever been, and maybe we exaggerate in saying that they were more common in the, quote, good old days, whatever that means. It seems a lot of these comments always relate to how broad our perception is. We can say that a particular time was wonderful and good because what we remember of that time was wonderful and good. But what we don't realize is that at that same time, there were all these other terrible things happening. You know, the poor neighborhoods of cities and the slums where problems are a daily occurrence, you know, severe problems, everything from muggings to murders to starvation to all sorts of things. Those places have existed throughout all of the times that are otherwise described as good. And so when we say that this particular age or that one was a golden age or it was a good age or whatever, it's almost as if we deny the existence of those human beings who were struggling and suffering during that time. In contemplating what was called the Cold War, this kind of political standoff or adversarial attitude that never thankfully erupted into open warfare between the United States and the Soviet Union, which of course now is no more. That went on for like 40 years. And in trying to understand why it was there, I recall reading once of the siege of Stalingrad. And if I remember correctly, it was something to the effect that it was such a long and terrible siege that something in the neighborhood of 20 million Russians died. And during that whole time, they were calling to the Allies, asking them to please come help us, and there was no response. What I was told was that there was a certain hesitance on the part of the Allies because they weren't terribly thrilled with what was happening in Russia and the Soviet Union at that time, that in a sense they were almost hoping, I suppose, that the Nazis and the communists would kill each other off, because both were perceived to be problems for the larger world. The question that came to my mind as I was reading this report, though, was in reference to the Cold War, was simply to ask Americans, where were you when 20 million Russians were dying? The unwillingness to have sufficient integrity and to be sufficiently dedicated to the value of human life, that when someone is in need, when someone is struggling, when someone is suffering, you do nothing to help. That would pretty much explain why, at least to me, why there were so many anti-American attitudes over the next 40 years. You know, with 20 million Russians dying, it seems to me that I was told by one person who was trying to describe this situation that virtually every family had lost someone. I don't know that the United States has been through something quite that encompassing since the Civil War, which in one sense was a long time ago, and yet there are certain portions of the country that remember it like it was yesterday, because it totally changed the shape of life in those areas, completely and permanently changed it. There was no way to ever go back. I suspect also that if Abraham Lincoln had not been assassinated, the history of the United States would be considerably different because of the plans he had for rebuilding a united America that, with his assassination, were never implemented. Bringing that back to a discussion of dedication and integrity, it's looking in the mirror and recognizing when something has happened that is so objectionable that it demands a response, and if the response we give is only apathy, is only complacency, is only a kind of stepping back and saying, it's not my problem. Well, actually it is. But just because it's everybody's problem doesn't mean that there are certain things that we can't do. If, for example, to use the metaphor of a small village, there's a particular person who had a terrible accident, they're going through physical therapy, and they need to build up their muscles again in order to do the job they did before. Perhaps they were the farmer who drove the tractor, or some sort of operator of that sort. And unless they can get back to their former strength, they won't be able to do that job again, which means that the crops won't get done as well, there won't be as much of a harvest, the people will go hungry. It becomes a row of dominoes where everything affects something else. So everybody in the village wants this farmer to recover. They want it so badly. But the physical therapy that farmer has to do means lifting weights and doing exercises. There is nothing, no amount of love, no amount of concern, no amount of intellectual argument, nothing that will make that farmer's muscles grow back, except for the farmer himself or herself lifting the weights and doing the exercises. Everybody can stand around and cheer and encourage and provide the best and latest and greatest exercise equipment. All that being said, again and again and again, it's proven true, whoever wants the muscles has to lift the weights. No matter how much you love someone, there's certain things you can't do for them. They have to have the dedication, and you have to have the integrity to stand by them and to understand what the truth of the situation is. That as much as I care about your struggles, as much as, yes, I would be there to help you if I could, this particular thing is not something I can do for you. If we could rewrite history, which of course we can't, at least not with any verifiable or helpful effect, if we were given the opportunity to travel back in time, what would we do for those people during the siege of Stalingrad? Could we send troops? Could we supply food? Could we, maybe there's a lot of things we couldn't do because we're simply not familiar enough with the conditions they faced. I mean, it was a severely, severely cold climate that many people would not be able to deal with very well. Even the Nazis themselves, as they were retreating from Stalingrad, they said it was literally, the trail was marked by frozen dead soldiers. That because what ultimately, I read in one place, what ultimately ended the siege of Stalingrad was not the victory of the Soviet forces, but rather of the harsh Russian winter. That cold was so extreme and the conditions were so harsh and the supply lines were so long that there was simply no way to sustain an army in that location during those months of the year. So in a sense, it was a battle against Mother Nature, and Mother Nature trumped everything. Because really it was a war, well, all wars should not happen in the first place. Certainly we're intelligent enough to come up with other solutions. The dedication needs to be a dedication to each other and to life, a dedication to wisdom. The dedication that says, I'm here, I'm going to do whatever I can, and I'm not going away until I have done everything I can. A sort of commitment. I suppose the only minor distinction between commitment and dedication is that commitment more often refers to people and dedication more often refers to tasks. But essentially it's the same attachment of spirit to a particular goal or outcome or contribution. I don't always know when I make these shows whether anything I say is going to be helpful to anyone. And yet I know that to continue doing these shows because of all the time in makeup and in preparation for production and in actual production and in editing and so on and so forth. It's a very, very involved process. And it takes a lot of dedication, and because this is for public access television, there's no money in it. There's no direct profit, and So someone might ask, so why do you keep doing it? Where is this dedication coming from? And I would say it comes from the numerous individuals I meet who respond and describe the difference that the show has made in their lives. If I am, in fact, contributing to someone's personal and spiritual growth, which is, in fact, the reason that Sisterhood exists, I don't dress this way to get attention for myself. I dress this way to bring symbol and metaphor and discussion to a place where people in general and people as individuals can address abstract things like love and wisdom and relationship and right and wrong, and becoming aware of one's own definitions and of one's own methods for dealing with life's challenges. If I appeared as a normal person, it would create an expectation that everything is supposed to be relatively within normal parameters. By appearing as Sister Who, I invite an embrace of imagination and fantasy and speculation that allows the spirit to reach into new areas that it would not otherwise be able to get to. The fascinating thing to me is, as any particular person's spirit reaches into those areas, they begin to discover bits of their own integrity. Things that are true about themselves that they didn't realize were there because they never looked at it that way before. I was talking with someone last night who, we got on the subject of labels. What do labels mean? And some people want to say, I don't like labels, I don't want labels, I don't use labels. The problem with that is then you become a labelless person. It's like saying, I don't like colors, so you become a colorless person. There is a utilization that is helpful, I think. A utilization that is actually essential to integrity. If one is dedicated enough, to use the metaphor of traveling, if one is dedicated enough to travel from one side of Europe to the other, you will go through all sorts of different landscapes, up and down roads, and all sorts of different things. And at various points, you will cross national boundaries. And in most cases, the asphalt on one side of the line doesn't look that different from the asphalt on the other side of the line. It's an invisible, abstract idea that you're crossing from one country to another. At one point in time, in the past, there may have been groups of people that lived across the line on both sides and considered them one group of people because they did not recognize that there was, in fact, a boundary there. But as history has unfolded, we now call the people on this side of the line French and the people on this side of the line German. And as you cross the line, suddenly you go from France to Germany, not because you become a different person, but because you have moved through a different range of space. In talking with this person last night, I suggested that labels are not boxes you have to live within. They're regions on a big graph, an enormous graph, and so you put a pin here because this is where you feel that you are now, and you put a pin here because you feel that's where you'll be at some point. And according to the graph, the names change. And if that metaphor holds true, basically wherever you are, whatever labels you embrace or accept, if you move consistently in a dedicated manner in any other direction, at some point the labels will begin to change. Not because you've changed, but because your environment has changed and you are in a different place on the map. You're not where you were. In a sense, you're the person that you have always been, but in a sense you're more than that too, because you have now added an additional experience, so that where that label described a part of you in the past, it cannot now describe all of you. Because now, to describe all of you, you have to use this label and this label. And if you keep moving, there may be a third label, or a fourth label, or any number of labels. Probably throughout the course of our lives, we go through literally hundreds of labels. The point in all this is to come back to that point, wherever you are, of that inner integrity, that dedication to being true to yourself. William Shakespeare. Above all else to thine own self be true, and it follows as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. If we learn truth and dedication here, it becomes what we have to give everywhere we go. It all starts within ourselves, but it can't stay there, or it's as good as non-existent. The thing to remember about dedication and integrity is that they both relate to each individual, and as such, what we essentially need to aim for with each individual is making things holistic, making them integrated, understanding that these are all dimensions of ourselves and aspects of ourselves, and it's not that you can take this aspect separate from anything else any more than you can chop off a hand and expect it to live, or chop off a hand and expect the person from which it was taken to live. When we take integrity away from persons, we wind up with a person who loses a sense of purpose, who loses a sense of direction, who loses a sense of what is appropriate and effective and good for their own survival. And that among all the rest that is essential to their survival is the survival of everyone else, because we're all interdependent. It's all, we have to be dedicated to others so that others will be dedicated to us, so that as a whole we can move forward together, discovering new things, learning to love, learning greater wisdom. And there's a very, very small step between being whole, being all the parts of myself, all my multidimensional qualities integrated. It's a small step from that to holiness. And I've sometimes wondered if maybe a way to understand the divine mystery is that it is that embodiment of highest wisdom and greatest love that also demonstrates and embodies the greatest wholeness that there is. That there is an integration of all things in peace, in love, in wisdom that happens within divine mystery, that is something for which we long, something for which we reach, not something we have attained yet. I don't think that means we should give up. Life is an ongoing process, and the whole point of a life taking so long to live is that it forms a lifetime. A lifetime takes an entire life to do. You can't create a lifetime in the first 5 minutes and then just play it over and over and over again for the next 50 years. Everything we go through, everything we learn, every place that our integrity shows up and shines like a light contributes to our sense of wholeness, of being holistic, of bringing the energy and wisdom and love of life to everyone and everything around us. The challenge, I guess, of dedication is that it is demonstrated as we do it. We can talk about being dedicated to something in the future and intend to be dedicated, but really dedication is a present and past tense. It's not really ever future. We make promises, we hope, we try, we strive, we aspire, but the manifestation of dedication is something that we can only see in our present and in our past. And even then deserves to be questioned, not because it's not true, but so that we may be more aware and more cognizant of how it is true. That when we want to understand who and what we are, sometimes one of the most telling things we can look at is, to what have I been dedicated in the past? People will admire someone who had the dedication to learn a musical instrument, for example, and admire the dedication of putting on an extended performance. But unless they are willing to be similarly dedicated and put in just as many hours of practice, they cannot expect to equal that person. And I would say life is not a competition, so they don't need to. That to which they do need to be dedicated, however, is that which most inspires and fills their inner being. That which, why do you do this? Well, because I love it. And then to raise whatever you do to the level of an excellence, to the level of excellence, so that you can move it that much further. Those who learn excellence in a particular area, it's not because they want people, hopefully it's not, because they want people to look up to them and consider them the top of the pyramid, and now I can lord it over you because I'm better than all of you. The person with that kind of attitude generally doesn't stay there very long, because that attitude in and of itself is contrary to excellence. But in doing that, it's so that they can become the point of the ship, pushing its way through the ocean, creating a path for others to follow, charting a new course. The whole point of achieving excellence is to go beyond the excellence that has already been done, so that as humanity continues to develop, we can in fact do more than has been done, rather than doing only what has already been done. If we only do what's already been done, we'll never be more than we are. Things need to move forward, but that's where true excellence, not pretended excellence, not, oh gee, look at me, but it's a way of, true excellence is a way of creating a bigger dance floor, a new trail in the wilderness, a new approach to something that may have been studied for centuries. And in that new approach, new things come to light, kind of like peeling off the layer of an onion, I suppose, to find out what's underneath. You can't see what the next layer is until you get the first one out of the way. And those who would say, I am the expert, this is as far as we go, I suppose it'd make me wonder what they're hiding. And maybe they don't even know what they're hiding. Maybe they have simply put their ego and their pride and their self-definition so much into the current place that if that place doesn't remain, they will lose a sense of who they are. But I would answer that if they're worried about losing a sense of who they are, they haven't really found it yet. Because when you find the sense of who you truly are, that will be a seed of life that can grow through every change you throw at it. It's not dependent upon the current circumstances of the current environment. In the final analysis, I suppose, the central quality of both dedication and integrity is the absolute refusal to give up. On one hand, I hear various spiritual teachers talking about the need to surrender to God, surrender to the universe, surrender to life, surrender to something. Yes and no. It depends on how you apply it in the specific situation. On one hand, we surrender to the truth and the greater understandings and perceptions around us. At the same time, however, it is not really that we're giving up so much as that we are bringing ourselves into alignment with this holiness. You know, that in every religious order, in every spiritual path, in every scientific endeavor, there had to be dedication. And in all of those pursuits, it was about someone who was trying desperately to get to the bottom of something, to find the truth of it, to figure out what in fact really, really worked. And if we say God is this, or if we say God is that, how should that manifest within our lives? If God is love, then shouldn't loving God move some away from being violent? There's a certain congruity that needs to be there, because that's what integrity is all about. That if we say we preach a gospel of love, a religion of peace, and so forth, those qualities need to be evident in our own life, or we are open to legitimate accusations that integrity is severely lacking. It is specifically that integrity, however, that gives strength to the work, that makes the demonstration convincing. It's kind of the corollary of the witticism, your actions are so loud I can't hear the words you're saying. And on that note, it reminds me of the playwriting classes I had in college, where they would say, show, don't tell. That it's not saying, I got up, I walked here, etc., but it was about showing the feeling and the emotion and the sense of being within that action. And as you could show what it was and how it felt and everything experiential about it, that it was not just simply a story, it was not just a description, but it was in the words embodying life. In a similar sort of way, dedication is about embodying integrity in everything we do, and specifically the integrity of our own beings, that When you say you believe in something, the dedication you embrace demonstrates that integrity. That when someone says you can't be like that here, you can't be gay, you can't be a pacifist in a military family, you can't be all sorts of different things, to instead calmly and respectfully say, but this is what I am. This is where my integrity resides. And I have to be dedicated to that integrity, because without that integrity, I have nothing good to offer you or anyone else. Even in those contrasting, conflict-oriented situations, there needs to be that dedication to integrity, but it's also recognizing that we nurture each other because we are dedicated to the other person's integrity also. That if a straight friend were to come with me to an event populated by gay men, I would expect him to act like a straight man. And I would be horrified if he tried to blend in by doing gay actions that really did not show who he truly was. I need to support him in being who he is. I need to support her in being who she is. And I hope that they will support me in being who I am. Whatever it is that you find yourself to be, do it with excellence and raise it to the level of an art. Make it something beautiful that can truly shine your integrity into the world around you, because that's going to be the most inspiring gift that you can give anyone. Thank you very much for watching today. I hope the comments of the last half hour have been helpful to you.